Hello, everybody. Welcome. My string and my hand is up. Welcome back. Hope everybody's been having a great morning. Managed to get enough food for lunch and coffee to keep you going. I know there's a lot in the agenda this week and lots to take in. So appreciate the opportunities to have you joining us here, and really excited for this lunchtime plenary session that we put together on the topic of circular value creation. And we've got a great lineup for this. We also just want to give a quick thanks to our lunch sponsor, RLG and Reconomy, for their support for the Circular Economy Summit as well. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Jean-François Houle to the stage. He's Dr. Houle is Vice President of Engineering for the National Research Council of Canada. He oversees the R&D activities within NRC's engineering division related to clean energy, industrial decarbonization, and climate change adaptation and resilience. So thanks very much, and we'll let you welcome up the others for the stage. Merci.
So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our panel on circular value creation. I just wanted to mention that at the National Research Council of Canada, we work with industry and governments to develop technologies and inform policy related to circular economy. And this includes some activities in plastic waste and reusing construction materials. But today I have the great honor and privilege of being the moderator for this panel. I'll start off with one definition of circular value creation, and I'm sure that our learned colleagues may extend or change it a bit, and that's going to be part of the interesting discussion today. So for us, it's a systemic approach to maximizing the value of resources throughout their entire life cycle, with the goals of reducing waste, extending product lifespan, and improving profitability. How much of a challenge or an opportunity is this? Well, back in 2021, the Council of Canadian Academies looked at the opportunities and the challenges of circular economy in Canada. And what they found is that our consumption rates of materials, energy, and water are among the highest in the world, with 73% of waste ending up in landfills or being incinerated. So much of this waste still holds value, and which is not being captured and brought back into our economy. So circular value creation, for me, gives us a framework for talking about economic transitions that address the multiple challenges that are faced by Canada and also the world. This includes climate change, environmental sustainability, productivity and affordability, and supply chain resilience. So today's panel will delve into circular value creation as a model for that can inspire innovation, can drive competitiveness, and also enhance productivity. As part of our discussion today, our panelists will be highlighting the innovation ecosystems that support circular economy in Canada and globally. They'll be touching on some approaches and some strategies that businesses are adopting here in Canada and around the world. So I'd like to start off by inviting our panelists to come to the panel, to the chairs. So we have Dr. Maya Ezzeddine, who is a Global Sustainability Leader for Schneider Electric Digital Buildings Research and Development. We have Heather Stevens, who is the Chief Operating Officer at Emissions Reductions Alberta. And finally, we have Dr. Henning Krassen, who's Assistant Head of Division for Future of Work and Value Creation, with a special focus on circular value creation in Germany. Okay? So we're going to kick this off maybe by having our speakers here introduce themselves, our panelists introduce themselves. So we'll start off with Henning, and I think there's a slide that Henning would like to throw up for you guys there.
Yeah, thank you very much, JF. My name is Henning Krassen, and I work together with the German Research Ministry. And in the last couple of months, almost a year, my focus was strongly on the Eureka network, because I had the wonderful opportunity to chair this network between Canada and Germany together. And Eureka is not more than the world's biggest innovation network, and the top priority in this year is circular value creation, which our Canadian friends and we brought up to the network. My major goal of today is to inform you about what we do, because we don't have the answers. We are launching a research call to set up circular value creation. So for me, it's not something fixed. I cannot give a definition, but it is the circular world we will have in 5 years after our call succeeded, and it will be launched on the 12th of June here in Montreal in our next network meeting. What is interesting for you, and that's why I brought the slides, are the 2 QR codes in the top right, because it's also a funding opportunity for Canadian SMEs. And you will find the link to the matchmaking to find international partners on the top right. You can see what we have done so far. And you have a first glimpse at what topics we will look in that field. But we will talk about that later. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Henning. So we are now going to turn to Maya.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Happy to be here and happy to see all of this engagement. I'm representing Schneider Electric Digital Buildings, where we have on the slide our circularity framework. So we are approaching circularity from a use better, use longer, use again mentality. So what that means is we want to use better materials in the beginning whenever we're designing and manufacturing any of our products, which are largely electronics. We want our electronics to be out in the field for the longest time possible with lifetime extension, serviceability, being able to deploy upgrades remotely to existing devices that are already out in the field. And then if ever we are going to recuperate the materials, we want to be able to use them again and give them a second life. So this is what we've been applying to our R&D activities across all of our portfolios, and it's been quite rewarding to see the change that's happening and the transformation. Thank you.
Okay. And then we're going to ask Heather to give us a brief introduction as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. I am happy to be here representing Emissions Reduction Alberta. I haven't come the longest way, as that's Henning who's certainly come the longest. But since 2009, we've been investing Alberta's carbon price that we have on the large industrial emitters. And we've been investing it directly into technologies that strengthen both economic competitiveness, they attract investment, create jobs, and they lower operating costs within the organizations. So these investments reduce emissions and provide also some broader environmental benefits, like improved water management, soil remediation, and air pollutants. So over the 16 years, I'm proud to say that ERA has invested nearly $1 billion into roughly 300 projects with a total direct economic impact of over $7.4 billion. We fund across the spectrum of investments, and one of our key pillars of investment is circular economy, and targeted to make up about 10 to 20% of our portfolio. So specific investments to date that we've made in the circular economy total $105 million to 35 projects, with total project value close to $500 million. Our guiding investments are laid out in our technology roadmap, and if you click that QR code, it will take you to our website where you can find our 5th iteration, which we launched in 2024. And if you explore our website a little bit more, you can also find a little bit about the projects that we fund, as well as historical and upcoming funding programs and calls that we have. So that's me.
Well, thank you very much, Heather. So I am going to take the moderator's privilege and ask the first question. So we'll start with Heather. What kinds of collaborations and innovative business models are actually needed for circular value creation? What do you think?
Well, we definitely see partnerships and collaboration as critical. It's the secret sauce to making all of this happen. When we put out a funding call, we make sure that we convene all parties. So we're looking at all key stakeholders, industry, government, innovators, and really getting them all laser focused on how we can deliver the greatest outcomes. We think that technologies and investments in those technologies really thrive when there is a robust regulatory policy environment so that they can set up the secrets for success from the beginning. And just like we say, climate change knows no boundaries. There's no one jurisdiction that can solve climate change. No one organization can create a circular economy. So for us, we really look at it from the fact that value flows across boundaries. It flows across traditional corporate, regulatory, and geographical boundaries. And it requires those new forms of partnerships and governance structures, quite frankly, to accommodate that. So kind of what it looks like in practice is everybody has a role. Academia and startups bring the new ideas and the technology. Governments bring those policy tools and incentives that are necessary. Corporates bring scale that's needed to make it proliferated in the marketplace. The supply chains are complex. Circular solutions require changes at multiple levels across the chain. So product design, material sourcing, distribution, end-of-life management. Often new infrastructure is needed, and this is again really where collaboration can play a role in spreading risk and spreading financial capital as well to get that new infrastructure built. And again, I think it's been said in probably every panel, but circular economy thrives on ecosystems. So the waste of one company becomes the input of another, and that's really how we're going to make the magic happen.
Sounds great, Heather. I was wondering, Maya, coming from a large company, how do you live these types of collaborations and things of that nature?
It's really integral. It's really key. So sustainability, as I always say, is a team sport. It's really not just something that one single person can do or one single entity. It really requires collaboration. When we're looking at an international landscape, like the one that Schneider operates in, this becomes even more critical. So if we were to go back to that use better, use longer, use again framework, when we talk about use better, right, we want to use better materials, but then that means that we're relying on our suppliers, who are also our partners, to be able to provide us with those better materials. And without those better materials, we can't use better, right? So we already know that we have devices that are operating 24/7 for years and years and years in very harsh environments, extreme cold, high humidity, heat, etc. We need to know that there are already alternative materials out there that we can use that are going to stand the test of time and still provide customers with the quality that they come to expect from us. So that means that we're always working with different suppliers, we're always trying to innovate and find alternative materials that can be used rather than traditional, for example, virgin plastics or metals and things like that. So it really does require a big collaborative effort.
Okay. Very good. And Henning, you've already mentioned something about Eureka, these collaborative frameworks. I'm sure you have much more to say on this, right?
I mean, of course, collaboration is the key. I could not agree more. Eureka is a network of 47 countries and the European Commission, so quite a big network and a lot of communication. But that's the one thing. We all know collaboration is important, communication is good, and since COVID, we should start to increase that and come back to a good level. But the second and maybe more important point is why should we collaborate? And I would like to look at the value creation systems where we need the innovations which we want to improve. And a company will only increase their value creation system and extend their network if there is an additional value in this and if it makes sense to increase the project. So I think when we talk about collaboration, we also have to talk about the business models connected to it, and is there a way how you can earn money by that collaboration?
Yeah, essentially collaborate to compete, right? Globally is one of the key factors when you're doing these things. Coming from the NRC, I'm a bit of a tech geek, and so I have to ask a question on technology. So Maya, since you're in an R&D group, what technologies or innovations do you see the industry need to get wider adoption of these types of
Yeah, well, if we look at the carbon footprint, for example, of our R&D portfolio, we see that 2/3 of the emissions are really coming from downstream Scope 3 emissions, where 1/3 are coming more from upstream, so the materials and things like that. So when it comes to downstream, we're looking more at the use case with the customer, end of life as well. So these are places that we really have to continue to innovate. Can we find ways, for example, for these electronics to be more energy efficient, or maybe not, maybe can find alternative sources of energy for them, solar cells, etc., things like that. Can we look at end of life and how we can give it a more circular end of life? And again, that goes back to collaboration. It's all circular, but these are some of the challenges, I would say, that we face.
I don't know if Henning or Heather, is there something you'd like to add, please?
Yeah, sure. I guess I can just focus in a little bit on our circular economy challenge that we launched back in 2023. So this challenge was put out. In the end, we funded $58 million, 11 projects across the province, worth $500 million. They were focused on advancing innovations and really on the impacts of materials production, processing, and disposal. So I'll just highlight a few examples of projects that we had in that call. We have North Star Clean Technologies, which is designing and building asphalt roof shingles recycling plant. So they're disaggregating old shingles and they're actually returning back to the manufacturers of new shingles the raw materials, which is an exciting recycling. We have RBW Waste Management, and they're commissioning a recycling system for high-density polyethylene containers, and they're processing them into products like curb stops and picnic tables, which is also an exciting innovation. And then we have Sparks Eggs, which was the little picture that was on my initial slide, but they're using inedible eggs that would otherwise be food waste. They're dehydrating them, and then they're putting them into a powder and using them in pet food and animal feed. And they're also exploring an agricultural application for soil enrichment, nutrient enrichment, so that's exciting. But the thing I wanted to point out, I think we were talking a little bit about what are the lessons learned when you're looking at innovation and technology. And of the 11 projects that we selected, only 6 are still active, which is quite a high attrition rate. We track our attrition rate. I would say typically it sits between 20 and 30% because we're in the field of innovation. This call has a higher attrition rate, and so what we're still seeing is that scale-up challenge exists. These people are struggling to get access to capital, especially when they're pre-revenue. They're still finding it challenging to find site hosts and industry partners that are willing to take the risk, and these things are really necessary in order for these innovations and technologies to get demonstrated and then ultimately widely proliferated. So, one of the things we did as an organization is we started a program called Innovator Support Services, and obviously there's lots of accelerators out there in the market, but we highlighted the need for our existing investments, people who are in our portfolio, but just have a little bit of a gap, so it's either market analysis or product development or something on the finance and capital side. So we provide those services to the projects that we fund so that we can help the execution of these projects and ultimately make them successful.
That's very cool. Before I pull on the thread on lessons learned, I'm just going to remind everybody that you can use the Swap Card app to pose questions to the panel and vote the questions that you like best. Et si vous désirez rédiger votre question en français, n'hésitez pas, je m'affairai à faire la traduction du mieux que je peux pour la poser à nos panélistes. Merci. So, lessons learned. So, where has this been applied? Circular value creation. Nationally or internationally, and what have you learned? What are the lessons learned? So maybe we start with Henning. He's looking at me, so I think intently he wants to jump on this one.
Yeah, I had in my mind to step on your starting point with a technology focus.
Okay,
and
go for it.
And I would like to add one thing, because there are many technologies out there, and they have the same environment which you have, the German Research Ministry, the Canadian Research Council. It's not that different. And I have colleagues with robotic funding and material funding and sitting in the offices next door. And those are innovations which will contribute also to a circular world. But the question is, how will they contribute? And do they only talk about making the processes we have a little bit more efficient, or much more efficient even, a 10% improve here and there? Or are there more effective way, completely different concepts which become available because we have new innovations? And that is a point coming to your new question, the lessons learned. That's something which came up in all the workshops. I had 6 workshops before I came here where we talked about what are the research needs in circular value creation and what do we have to improve in the future. And it always came up, we have to think out of the box, and we cannot just change a linear economy by adding a circular puzzle part here and there and then call it a brilliant circular economy or circular value creation. We really think from the scratch and start something new. And I already met several people here who have the same approach, the same mindset. An example I heard about a small city in Canada growing extremely, and she said exactly the same. It's growing and we can build up new concepts of a circular world and opportunity, which we sometimes forget.
Great. Maya?
Yeah, I'd love to add. So coming from a research and development environment, we know that circularity starts at the design stage. So before you even have a product, that's where circularity has to start. So we apply eco-design to all of our design processes, thinking about the entire life cycle of the product and all the materials used. So that means that we want to design electronics knowing that there's a global e-waste problem that we don't want to contribute to. So we have to design electronics in a way that we know we can, at end of life or at any time that a certain material needs to be replaced, it actually can be replaced. You can open the device, you can replace just that one failing product with something that is as standardized as possible so that people can actually find the replacement spare part, right? So that's really important, is standardization of materials and components. Being able to open and separate each individual material. So if I'm looking at, a touch screen panel that has a glass touch screen with a plastic housing and then a printed circuit board inside, I want to make sure that I can separate each of these materials so that we can actually have successful resource recovery. Otherwise, we know that this is going to go and get shredded and disposed of in a landfill, unfortunately, right? So this is something we really have to think about as early as possible in the design stage. We work with our research and development engineering squads. As soon as there's a new idea on the table, the sustainability team gets involved to help guide the discussion throughout the design process of the product.
Very good, very good. So we have a question from at mic number 2. We have Walter who'd like to ask a question.
Yes, thank you. Walter Yeager from ECD Compliance. Appreciate all of the insight that all of the panelists have been providing there. I want to cue off a couple of things that Henning had said early on in his introductions there. One was collaboration, and in the same sentence talking about making money as well. And one of the big challenges with circular economy is how to move towards a circular economy but not collapse the economy at the same time. You want to grow the economy at the same time. Henning, I'm sure, both from the being from Germany and also with the Eureka project, is probably very familiar with digital product passports that are coming up in Europe for a number of products. I often work within the electronics industry, so have been following that quite a bit. One of the suggestions with regard to moving to a profitable circular economy is it needs information associated with the things like circularity properties of materials as well, so that that information is flowing with it. Even chain of custody with regard to, there's a suggestion of, okay, it starts with the design phase, but you've got to look at, okay, can I bring in some reused components, which has a lot of issues on its own, especially for electronics with regard to safety and that, but there's interest in it. There's recycled content, but there is many more chain of custody models associated with recycled content than most people probably realize, and the fact that things are not always as clear as they can be. So you need good information going with materials, and I know that also in Japan, they're working on a program, actually an organization very similar to NRC in Canada is working on a program right now to look at how to communicate material passports with materials as they flow physically. You also have a digital counterpart associated that goes with it as well that provides the information. So you get information about the circularity, the performance, et cetera, the materials, and chain of custody information. So you've got some level of due diligence associated with that. And they want to and are looking at how to potentially use that information capability in order to be able to grow their capability within Japan. But of course, we live and work in a global supply chain as well, so they can't do it on their own either. So what can we do within Canada, right? And maybe that's from I don't know exactly all the details going on in Eureka there as to what might be coming about, but how do we get that moving forward within Canada so that within that global supply chain and the global market as well, we can promote that the circular economy in that way and at the same time grow the economy.
Thank you for the question. That's maybe the most important question and will decide if we have success or not. We ended up with discussing data all the time. So in a perfect world, we could imagine we have all the data available and you can do a real deep dive how many data you would like to have at a certain state. And it's different from material to material. In example, carbon fibers, if you want to recycle them, it's important that you know how many times they have been recycled before, and this decides what you can do with this recycled material. So one way would be we collect all the data and the producers store everything they have and make it publicly available, and new business models could start on that. But you also need a lot of energy to handle those data, and maybe it's not economically feasible at the end. I'm not an expert on that, but I have a feeling storing all data will not be the solution. The other thing is you have to think about where the data will be used. And if the people are able to handle those data, if you think about less developed parts of the world, or regions where you don't have a safe internet access and it might break, you also have to make sure if you can trust the data. And if you make a business model based on data you receive, it becomes pretty important that you can trust the data, else your business model breaks. You asked what you can do in Canada. It's the same what people from every country can ask. Design a best case model. Use the data which makes sense and show how you improved your business case by this. And then we spread word. That's what we will do with funded projects. There are 48 countries talking about the projects, and we will make sure that these examples are heard.
Yeah, can I add to that?
Go ahead,
yeah,
Maya.
so the digital product passport is definitely something that we're also working on. So actually one way that we are contributing from Canada is that, well, we operate globally, but I myself am based in our R&D center right here in Montreal. So we're already doing this type of innovation from right here. And from a data perspective, I would say there are two main avenues I would consider at this moment in answer to your question. So one of that is the digitization of decades and decades and decades of data, right? So Schneider is a very old company. It's way more than 100 years old. And you can imagine we've accumulated a lot of data over the years, and a lot of it is not digitized. So digitization itself is a big process, especially because we're completing life cycle assessments on every single product in our portfolio. So there's a lot of old data to go back and get from hand-drawn drawings from decades ago and things like that. So that alone is a big task, just to be able to do these LCAs. Data on another perspective is when we're talking about electronic devices that are communicating and sending data back and forth. So I mentioned earlier that the carbon footprint of the energy efficiency of the product is really key. So the more you send data back and forth, the more energy you're using, the more data center storage you need, et cetera. So one of the things that we're working on with our teams of engineers is thinking about, well, what is the optimal amount of data to send where you can get optimization of the systems that you need, you have a really clear snapshot, but maybe you don't need data to be sent every second or every minute. Maybe you can send it every 10 minutes or every hour and still get a clear snapshot. So it's looking at different use cases and finding that sweet spot depending on the product, depending on the application, because that carries with it a big footprint as well.
Yeah, and if I can just add, the energy use is obviously the elephant in the room and was already brought up, but that's, exactly part of the solution that we also have to address. And so things like nuclear and what kind of role do other alternate energy sources have in powering the future of AI? Because it's not just in this data collection, it's actually going to be used in optimizing circularity in the whole, sort of using it for digital optimization of efficiencies and processes and sort of many layers within circularity. So when we talk about collaborations, partnerships, it needs a whole systems thinking. You have to think about the energy piece right along with whatever data you're wanting to collect or drive for.
Sounds good. I don't know if Walter wanted to follow up on anything. We're good?
Nope, thank you very much.
Okay. So we talked about money. We're going to have a question about money again. So we have a question from Arjang who's asking, is finding investments financing more difficult for circular economy projects, I guess for entrepreneurship, compared to traditional projects? Are you finding it, why or why not? Would that be more difficult or less difficult? What's your experience? I know that Heather's working with a lot of collaborators sometimes in funding projects. I don't know what your experience has been.
Yeah, I would say the challenge is a lot of the circular entrepreneurs are still in the pre-revenue stage. Sometimes there is a challenge for people to understand the full valuation, I would say. So where are the revenue streams coming from? And I was in a panel this morning where they talked about the fact that someone has a waste stream, they're paying right now to dispose of it. They have somebody else who uses that as a feedstock. They could give it to them for free, they're then cost neutral. Or they could charge them money for it and earn a revenue stream. But that person then needs to pay for it. So sometimes it's the linkages in the chain that are challenging for some of the traditional financing, I would say, to get their head around the whole picture. So in short answer, our experience is that they are having more challenges getting financing. It's hard to tease away what's happening in just general economic play at the moment, but I do think there's a complexity and a requirement for traditional financiers like very clean, neat systems. Linear systems make sense to them. When you're dealing in circularity and complexities and perhaps even circularity at multiple stages, it sometimes can be a little bit more challenging to get everybody on board.
Investors like unicorns, they don't like herds. So Maya or Henning, would you like to add anything to this? Or?
Yeah, sure. Just real quick, so I would say that there's definitely a cost to pay for being an early adopter. So that's, whenever you're trying to push the limit, you always have to trailblaze, right? So there is a bit of a cost to pay there. So this is something that, we're applying through our research and development. We know that we have to rigorously test alternative materials or different products and things like that, because this is all new, and we're trying to kind of trailblaze that new frontier there. So there is a cost to pay, and a lot of times maybe the alternative solutions that we might come across are still not that cost competitive because they're new, so or they're not as widely applied. So there is a little bit of that to take into account, but I think with time and demand, things will settle down just like anything.
Well, circular economy at the beginning is just a word or two words, and you don't know what is behind it. So I experience in many funding applications that circular economy is used as a buzzword. Mm-hmm. So give us funding, it's circular economy. And you have the same with contribute to all the sustainability goals we have. We are resilient. It's an agile project, and whatever keyword you can think of. So you should use circular economy, circular value creation to show where you want to contribute. But afterwards, you have to show that what you do makes sense.
And if I can add one more thing, it's why organizations like us are really critical at this time. It's money in to de-risk. It's we match private money so that we make sure that there's a market pull and a demonstration that the market needs this solution. But at the same time, we recognize that there is still de-risking. To Maya's point, it costs money to be the early adopter. And so organizations like yours as well, JF, we're here to provide that financial support because we recognize that there is a premium when you're trying to move first and before you can sort of widely proliferate these technologies. So it's certainly why we exist and why we continue to do what we do.
I think advisory services and incubators play a vital part in helping young entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs understand the dependencies when they're presenting a business model to an investor, right? Sometimes it's, I have the greatest idea in the world, and it all on its own will solve everything. We know that disruptors exist, but they're not a dime a dozen. They're pretty unusual. And so understanding that ecosystem and being able to line up the collaborations we talked about becomes essential in your business plan. And I think that's what we're seeing. I don't see any additional questions. Any questions from the floor? We have 2 mics. We have 1 person going to mic number 2. Please.
Hello. Can you hear me there? Yes. So I'm with the Commission for Environmental Cooperation. That's NAFTA's environmental agency. 2 comments. I've been here in Montreal for about 2.5 years and really surprised with youth's interest in recycling clothing. You go out, I live by Montreal Park, and I see youth all the time out there selling clothing. There are a lot of shops that pop up. I think there's something there in terms of how youth organize to recycle, and I'm wondering if we shouldn't help formalize some of these things. Another thing that I've noticed for a long time, and if you're under 30 in this room, I've got 4 pairs of shoes that are older than you. And to have those shoes means you need cobblers. You need people to fix them. And unfortunately, the guy that I go to right here downtown, he sends it to his father, who's probably almost 70 years old, to fix the shoes. Do we not need more vocational training on how to fix things? And then the last thing, when you buy a phone or a computer, they're meant to be obsolete. So I'm wondering, if you have an old computer, they almost don't work, and same with your phone because of the memory space, and that's part of the model in which you buy a product and the company wants to sell you the next model, right? And anything you buy from, and usually China, kitchen appliances, they're not repairable. You can't fix these things. So do we not need more intervention from maybe the state on certain sectors to ensure that whatever they're selling is fixable? Because in this context that we're living in today, where more and more people do want to fix things and recycle things, if you can't fix them because it's just not available, we're not going to go in the right direction. Just would appreciate any comments.
Mm-hmm. Anybody would like to?
Yeah. I mean, I wholeheartedly agree with everything you just said. Anecdotally, I have 2 teenagers. I was actually just talking to someone at the reception last night about that very thing. I think innately, they just are more passionate about upcycling, thrifting. They share clothing amongst their gang of friends in a way that I just don't think we did in my generation, which was a minute ago. And I anecdotally on shoes, I'm actually wearing a pair that I took in to get new heels, and it is I think the guy was at least 80 that did my shoes, and there is just, it's a dying vocation. So I think it's a point well taken, and certainly the trade schools have a role in this as well, which is partly why these collaborations and partnerships need to exist. We need to bring academia along in all forms of academia, including the trades.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, please.
There are many ideas by young people what they can do to help in a sustainable world. What we have to do is make sure they have all the necessary informations and know about all the upcoming concepts and ways what you can do. For us, it's all the field of science communication. So whenever we have a research project in Germany, we encourage the researchers to talk about what they do. And this, in an indirect way, helps the young people to set up good initiatives.
And for too long, in recent, modern industrialization, people got very used to thinking linearly and not thinking about that repair component. And then, these vocational trainings have been dying, but that's also something that we're trying to revive now with this circular mindset. So when we, for example, design a product to be repaired, we need to make sure that it actually can be repaired. The materials exist, the spare parts exist, and the skill set exists as well. Otherwise, you can't repair this product. So this is something that are trying to build and develop, and it does take new training models. It does take new education and just rethinking the way that things work. But it's true that all these old electronics, for example, are ending up in the landfill, and we already know that every year there are, I think if I'm remembering the statistics well, I think $56 billion in 2019 of recoverable gold and other types of precious metals that were in the landfill that are coming all from electronics that are all becoming critical raw materials that we're not even able to find anymore. So the best place to mine for them is in the landfill. So it all comes back full circle, and hence our circular economy.
So we did, originally when I mentioned circular value creation, we talked about affordability, and that's also part of it, right? We do know that our younger generations, because of the lack of growth in real world salaries, that there are needs for more affordable solutions, for more affordable products for everybody. So definitely, this seems like such an elegant way to deal with an affordability issue and also a circular value creation issue at the same time. What we've seen in terms of the trades, if we look at construction, it's a sector that's seen diminishing productivity, fewer skilled trades in the construction sector and building sector. But we are seeing a younger generation that's interested in using new tools, but also interested in making sure we're not creating more and just trying to use as much as possible what exists already and just being a little smarter about it the whole way through. So it's pretty exciting, and hopefully we can feed off their energy to drive this forward. So I don't know if there are any other questions.
I'll just pull on your affordability thread for a minute too, because I think the other piece of this is energy efficiency, right? So we do need to make sure that we're giving everybody the skills to identify these energy savings, which then make things more cost effective, and then we're passing along a cheaper good to the consumers too. But it's a really key element that weaves into many parts of circularity as well.
Very good.
Microphone one.
Microphone one? Can't see microphone one. There is somebody there behind those lights. Please go ahead.
I apologize in advance because I hope this will be a cohesive kind of question. And I'm just trying to tie some of the discussion together. So for some perspective, I work in reducing embodied carbon. I understand that the strategies that we try to prioritize are reusing existing build nothing, reusing existing building, and then what you cannot reuse, deconstruct and reuse. And I'm seeing that there is a disconnect, even when we're looking at material passports. I attended a workshop. I won't name names or anything, but I do remember somebody asking a question about circular economy, and if it will solve all the problems that we're trying to address. And even the person running the workshop made this comment about how circular economy doesn't always necessarily align with sustainability. And it to me, I looked at that as, this person who is leading the workshop maybe still thinks of circular economy as jargon and doesn't understand the why and how it fits into the context of why a material passport would be required, how that fits into, of course, we're talking in the context of construction material waste. So I guess to put this all together, how do you see ways to, when we talk about resilience, the buzzwords that you were talking about, resilience and sustainability and, a green economy, if we want to see people valuing these strategies, I think there needs to be a little bit of two things happening simultaneously. We want people to be designing structures to be adaptable, and if there may be in a spectrum of adaptability, its highest adaptability would be that it could be disassembled and materials reclaimed. But on the other hand, I'm seeing that, even tying it back to talking about shoes and other apparel, this like operational use stage of these products, they're not being maintained properly so that we see the highest value in optimizing these materials. So do you have any suggestions or advice on how we can do these two things simultaneously? One, where we build the infrastructure to allow and enable for deconstruction and reuse, and building capacity around changing the mindset of demolition contractors to deconstruction, new building designers to retrofit designers, and then, how can we incentivize this and support it to move forward?
If anybody would like to answer? Yeah.
I also apologize at the beginning because my answer will not be sufficient. But what I would recommend is first talk to the people working in that disassembly process to see how it is really done and what you can change. I talked to a person who has a construction company and uses parts from old houses in new houses. And he had a complete design of a new house, and it was planned to include a specific door from an old house. But then the disassembly company just threw away that door. It was a language problem. They didn't speak German and they didn't know, and it was gone. And then he had to change the whole construct, and that was much more effort when it had been to buy just a new one. So if you know how it works, then you have a chance to change it. But that's just a small piece of the answer.
No, thank you.
I don't know if there's anybody else, but just to give you talked about retrofit. Just to give you a point, a statistical point, there are 13.5 million homes in Canada that need to be retrofit if we're going to meet our 2050 targets. So do the math. 13.5 million homes or buildings means a building a minute as of today. So if you think there's no retrofit economy, there's actually a retrofit economy. So.
Thank you. I just wanted to add, about talking about data. I wonder if the why behind of that is missing, like the storytelling. What is the data we're looking for and why? And maybe if you have something to add, and then I'll go sit down. Thank you.
Yeah, I think this is the last minute of play. I've been warned, so we have one more answer. Who would like to do the honors on that one? Tough question. Go ahead.
So the question was about data and storytelling?
Yeah.
And what is the right amount of data for the storytelling?
What's needed to do that story, to make that compelling storytelling, right?
I guess it's really data dependent. Which data are we talking about, and what are we using that data for, right? So
fundamentally, it's your audience, right? Who's the audience when you're presenting that data? And I think we've alluded to this in terms of, if you're talking to investors, how are they going to have a return on investment? If you're talking to people who are trying to achieve certain targets, then it's how do I get to my target as quickly as possible. So I wish I had a magic answer, because I think it's a bunch of young companies that like to know that. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say it's also around these proof points, right? So I think anytime you can have real world examples that sort of demonstrate to you the power of data. We have lots of digital optimization, not quite yet in circular economy, but in our portfolio that are using it for methane optimization or pipeline optimization. And when you have those proof points around what's the power of data, that becomes a really compelling storytelling.
Fantastic. So on that, we're going to finish and thank the panel, our great experts, for this wonderful panel. Thank you very much.